What's up, brother? How's
Well,
the dynamic duo is here tonight on another episode of the Blind Pig podcast, courtesy of bgobsession.com. Before we jump right into this thing, of course, we'll go through our particulars. You can find us on all major audio streaming platforms, youtube.com, all social media platforms, and of course at the mothership, bgobsession.com. This was kind of a hard episode, not gonna lie. This was not one that we were highly motivated to get on and talk about. As I will say, this was a very disappointing Monday Night Football loss. We can go back and forth a little bit. I don't, and I'm curious where you stand. The sense there was a lot of that there needs to be some definitive finger pointing and blame laid, and almost to the point where changes need to be made. I'm not at that point, but I'm curious, brother John. What do you think?
you know what I was most upset about on Monday was that I stayed up till almost midnight, and I mean that's an old guy viewpoint. I mean I'm like I really I can't not stay up and watch my team play because I've been rooting for them for a long time, but I just had a vibe, man. I would say on that last drive, I just had a feeling that something was going to happen. And maybe it's because we've had the ball bounce our way so many times. Ironically, the biggest, ball bouncing our way being last year against the Bears in Week 8 or whatever it was with the Hail Mary. But I just had that feeling. And then when the fumble happened, I knew we weren't going to get the ball back. I wasn't sure they would win. I thought, but I was pretty sure we weren't going to get the ball back. So I don't know. There's a lot of histrionics going on because that's what fans do. And I had a hard time titling the podcast tonight, the episode, because I'm kind of like, what the hell do you say about that? So I just said 2025 season, a big question mark, but Daniels is not. And I think that's the reason I threw up the Super Jayden symbol for this one, is because, you know what? The guy I'm least worried about, even though, as we were talking about before we started the pod, even though, let's be honest, Jayden pretty much, we did lots of things to lose the game, but if Jayden doesn't make the mistakes he made, we win it. So that's the way to put it, and he would put it that way. But I just think he's such a no bullshit guy. I just love the way he carries himself because he didn't mince words. He said, I cost us the game. I've got to do better. I will do better. There was a comment today during the Quinn presser during the Jayden presser that apparently on Monday he sent Dan Quinn a text and that he was asked about that because Quinn commented on it, but wouldn't go into details. I think I've got that right. And they asked Jayden about it, and Jayden basically said that's between us. But I'm sure I'm just guessing that it was probably I let you down, coach, and I own it, and I'm going to do better, and let me know what I need to do to get to to not make those kind of mistakes. And I'm just guessing that's kind of was probably the tone of it, but I'm not worried at all. And Derek, you've been the most, I guess, reasonable is the word, fan on our site, which sometimes annoys the hell out of people because they want to, they get emotional and they want to blame and they want to light the torches and that kind of stuff sometimes. And Derek, your position the whole way this season has been, this is year 2 of a rebuild, and it's on us if our expectations are through the roof and we don't realize where the organization is. Doesn't mean that we don't have the best GM in the NFL, because I think we might. Doesn't mean that Dan Quinn's not a hell of a coach, and it sure as hell doesn't mean anything about Jayden. And I'm not even sure this season is a definitive. We're going to be able to judge Joe Witt Jr. as a second-year defensive coordinator. Something takes a little while, and and I'm sure. But anyway, Derek, I just give you kudos because we were talking about how out of control our game day chat, which we have every game day, how out of control it was, and I kind of opted out of this one because I just wanted to be able to focus on the game. But I know Derek was commenting about how negative it got quick, which again, we can understand you go down 13-0 on Monday Night Football against a team you probably shouldn't go down 13-0 against. People start to lose their mind. But I want to give you kudos for keeping it calm, and I think you've done a good job this year to try to remind people, hey, it's year 2 with a year 2 quarterback, an all new coaching staff, and a lot of different faces, not only last year, but coming into this year. So that's a lot to, and I know we've talked about, we probably got spoiled last year a little bit with, it seemed like the bounces went our way every single game, after the first few. And we had some magic going last year. And maybe this year we're just not going to have all the breaks like we did last year. And we're just going to, I don't know, we're going to have to see where it goes, man. I still think we could win the division. I really do. But that was a tough one to win.
I do too. And to your point, I try to stay objective and try to remind myself and not get too emotionally wound up. And I tend to get a little combative with people when it gets that way. And I will freely admit that this is not me saying that you can't be critical, and this is not me being critical myself, but it's also just trying to keep a level perspective and an understanding of what we're really talking about here. We're talking about, if you go back and you look, we went to the NFC and I don't want to totally go down memory lane, but it bears repeating. We went to the NFC Championship after we turned over 60% of our roster, and 40% in somewhere around 80% of that turnover was guys that were on single-year deals. So we turned it over another 45 to 50% this offseason. Add to that the fact that we're missing our starting running back in Eckler. We're missing offensive line. We're missing our best offensive lineman in Cosme outside of Tunsil. We're handing the ball off, and we're trusting a guy who is a rookie who has carried it more in the NFL than he had in the 14 months prior to that. We're missing we have Darnell Savage, who we signed off the street 2 weeks ago, making impact plays, not just playing, but he made a couple plays. He flashed this week. We've got Preston Smith, who we signed 3 weeks ago, and I even posted on the board, where the hell is he? And it was brought to my attention that he had played 45% of the snaps this week. And I didn't. Okay. There's a lot going on beyond just what we're seeing. You know what I mean? Like what our expectations are and should be. Am I saying we should have beat the Bears? Absolutely, we should have beat the Bears. We did beat the Bears. The only thing we didn't beat them on is where it matters most. The two things: the scoreboard and turnover differential. Because, and to your point, Jayden Daniels throws an interception to the DB on the 1 yard line. 94 out of 100 times he doesn't miss that throw. That is a throw. Debo was open. The play call was there. It was protected well. Daniels hitched. And he threw it, and it allowed the time for the defensive back to make. Guess what? He ain't gonna make that mistake again. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty confident in that. Jayden fumbled again, and luckily bounced right back up to him. Then, when the game is on the line in absolute crunch time, we convert. If we don't turn the ball over, they don't win the game. Like it was to that point where we were not in victory formation, but the turnover is the only reason that they had enough time. If we don't, and it slipped out of Jayden's hands. It wasn't even on Bill. It was on Jayden. It slipped out of his hands. Does he wear a glove? I don't know. Does he get more prep with wet footballs? I don't know. There was Butterfingers all across the field. One went through McNichols' hands. Sandra still dropped an interception right down in the red zone that would have stopped would have kept points off the board. There was so many things that happened. There was a Frankie Louvu with an untimely offsides penalty, if I'm not mistaken. There was so many things that happened that were not us, that were us beating ourselves. And do you want to look at the coaching staff for that and say, hey, there's a discipline issue or whatever? Okay, we can have that conversation. But I'm not looking at this roster makeup, and I'm not looking at this coaching staff, and I'm not looking at this GM and saying something needs to change. Because again, to what you just said, we are 20 games into this thing. And in those 20 games, we have an NFC Championship appearance. We are still 3-2 which is not the most fun in the world. Or 3-3. You'd love to be 4-2 right now going into Dallas, but at the same time, we're still in the thick of it. The NFC is wide open.
Yep.
The NFC East is even more open than that. Philly just lost to the Giants, and Dallas just lost to the Panthers. So this year is not chalk. Okay, this has been a very odd year, and it seems that there's a lot of parity.
And that's the thing. It was kind of a weird game because if you look at what we were talking about in the last pod, which I thought was pretty reasonable, you're looking at it statistically, they're one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. We're one of the best rushing, offenses in the league, if not the best at that time. And yet we come in. Now I will say I think they went to the well way too often with Bill as a rookie. I think Chicago saw that coming and they game planned the hell out of it and they shut him down. But then they kind of ran all over us. That's probably overstating it, but they certainly had more success running than we did, which was the exact opposite of what we thought. The one thing I wanted to get out there, and we can talk a little bit more about the actual game, but I don't know if you had this thought, but not that Caleb Williams hasn't been playing well. He played pretty well, but the whole game, despite the turnovers, Caleb Williams didn't have any turnovers, but despite the miscues that Jayden was involved in, I am so glad that we've got Jayden Daniels and not Caleb Williams. And really, it's for two reasons. First of all, and it's not Jayden's legs, although that's a big plus. The first thing is Caleb Williams just isn't very accurate. The difference between Jayden placing balls on, just on the average passing play, how accurate he is, and Caleb Williams not being nearly as accurate or not being able to place the ball precisely, I thought it was pretty glaring. And then the other thing was when the Bears made plenty of stupid mistakes of their own. And while they let Luke McCaffrey, they didn't even cover him, right, for a gimme touchdown. Yep. They had all kinds of miscues. And what I saw was Caleb Williams going over and throwing his helmet and being demonstrative on the sideline and yelling at people. And what I saw Jayden do is jog back to the sideline. I just see a calm with him, and he's not gonna let a mistake derail his head and get him out of the. I have no doubt in my mind if we could have gotten out there with a minute left on the clock, he would have found a way to pull that game out. It was just the timing of the last fumble was just, it could not have been worse for as far as the game situation. But anyway, so I'm really glad we got Jayden, and everything he's done since Monday night, it just reinforces that he most quarterbacks know they're not to make excuses and not to throw their teammates under the bus, but you can just tell with him it's totally genuine, and he doesn't even want to talk about it. He does there's nothing to talk about. The weather is the weather. What the weather is, everyone is playing in the same weather. I made the mistake. It's totally genuine, and you can tell that. And I just think that gives us we have a bright future with him. Whether or not I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the season. I really don't. But it was just a weird game. And I looked at the stats today, and I was kind of surprised that we dominated most of this, or we were ahead in most of the stat categories, despite the fact that we didn't do a lot in the entire first quarter and some of the second quarter. So we didn't do anything on the scoreboard for quite a while. But if you look at the stats, you would have thought we had won the game, other than maybe the fumbles and the turnovers. But I don't know. I thought there were some good things. I thought it was nice to see Zach Ertz show up. He had a really good game. Obviously the touchdown, and didn't drop a pass, caught everything we threw at him. Debo didn't do much, which I was a little surprised by that. He got targeted, and he caught most of the balls, but he just didn't have. There weren't a lot of yards after the catch. But I think that was their game plan: stop Debo and stop Bill. And
yeah, they sold out on the run. It was absolutely, they were not going to let us get. And which is crazy to think about, force JD5 to beat you, and he almost did. You know what I mean? They sold out on the run. I think it wasn't for lack of trying. Uh, Bill had a couple good runs. He had a couple big mistakes. He had 2 more fumbles this past weekend, one of which got recovered, one didn't. And again, as I go back to mistakes, I look at the team, and that is not something you can't change your roster based on errors, right? Like you can't make drastic changes and personnel changes based on mistakes unless those mistakes become a detriment to the team. And I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a lot of other things that we can look at in that game. And you talked about it. Jayden's he's not losing sleep over this, but he's gonna obsess over it. And I don't know if there's a better way to put it than that. He's not gonna let this affect his next game in a negative way. He's only gonna let it drive him to get better. So it will affect his next game in a way, that changes him because he's gonna get better and he's gonna let it fuel him. He's not gonna let it defeat him. I think honestly, these guys went into that locker room, and as frustrated as they might have been, they're looking around, and they're not looking at it in a way of negativity. They're looking at it like we had these guys, and we let them at it. We gave it to them. You know what I mean? Their confidence is still going to be high. They're still going to be believing what they're doing. Everybody in there knows that the game was there for us to have, and we are the ones that dropped the ball.
Yeah, and even the defense, which is taking a pummeling, I get it. I get why, we've gone one loss, and all 3 losses the defense did not play great in. But despite that, we held the Bears to 30% on third down. They were we shut them down on the 1 fourth down attempt they made, and they only got 3 sacks, I think 4 tackles for loss, and they hit Jayden 5 times, but all of our numbers were better than that. I think the sack total was the same, but I think we got to Caleb Williams something like 9 times. So it wasn't, and we won time of possession. Despite that, giving up that lead, that was the biggest time of possession advantage we've had all season. It was like 31 and a half minutes of time of possession. So we should have won the game. And I mean, I think the biggest thing is, and I heard like 3 or 4 different players said this, you're not going to win many NFL games, if any NFL games, when you have a 3-0 turnover margin. You're just not. It's too hard. Even against a bad team, you give the ball up 3 times and don't turn it over on your side, you're not going to win that game very often.
Yeah. Again, this goes back to I look at the game against the Eagles last year where we have 5 turnovers and we ended up winning the game. Mm-hmm. Or something stupid. Like this can't be the benchmark, guys. You know what I mean? Like I don't know a better way to put it, but this can't be something that you set a precedent. Like this is what happens normally in an NFL season. And like I said, coming in, there have been all kinds. Look at the other game that was happening on Monday night. Did anybody pick Atlanta to go in there and beat Denver? And not just beat them convincingly. Like. Now that Atlanta loss doesn't look so bad, now does it, right? And all of these other things that we've been talking about. So there's a lot left on this bone, meat all left to be on this bone. There's a lot that's going to happen in the coming weeks. A little bit of news. I don't know if you saw this.
That loss sucked, Derek, before you go to the news. That loss absolutely sucked. However, It's not even close to being the worst NFC East team loss this year. I mean, Dallas got beat by Carolina, like convincingly beat. Every team, the Eagles have had a bad couple of losses. So
the Panthers, they lost to Carolina.
Yeah, I mean,
or the Giants. No, the Giants. They lost to the Giants on Thursday. So yeah, it's still there. This thing's not over yet, and I don't think that they need. And they're just going to get better as things. They haven't peaked yet. We haven't even seen the best. You know what I mean? We're still seeing growing pains at this point. But a little bit of news. I don't know if you saw Noah Brown placed on IR. That's not great, especially considering you wonder why they didn't do it 3 weeks ago. That's an error in my opinion. Like I said, I'm not saying this through burgundy colored glasses. I can point out concerns and issues when I see them, and that's one of them. That's not the way you handle that. Something doesn't make sense unless there was a setback. But a guy with a groin injury who is not on IR for 4 weeks and then gets put on IR after 4, that's not really good roster management. So I'm curious why that went down the way that it did. But we will.
Quinn said today that it was not a setback, that he just wasn't recovering the way they expected him to. So I agree with you, and I really think, I mean, nothing against Noah Brown. He's super talented, but if you look back at the last 4 or 5 seasons, he just hasn't been able to stay on the field. So, I mean, at some point it just becomes wishful thinking and you just have to move on. So I don't know what'll happen there, but.
Well, in that notion, Treylon Burks will be coming to visit the team tomorrow. That's a guy we actually talked about on this podcast before he came out and got drafted by the Titans. He went first round pick. The guy's got talent. He has stupid speed. So I'll be curious if that's kind of something. I'm not expecting him to walk in and be ready week 1 or 2. But as the season goes on, especially if we can continue along this path and he becomes a weapon into this, into the third quarter of a season in going into later, to see if he could be a guy that could contribute. Beyond that, we did sign a defensive end that I'm not familiar with, Drake Jackson. I don't know much about him, but he was signed, I believe, to the active. It was not a situation that he was signed to the practice squad. So there, you wonder if there is something there. It looks like he's 24 years old. Let's see if I can get some quick info here. Not much. Looks like he was a third round pick, a second round pick in 22 by the Niners. There's an Adam Peters connection. He has not logged a start in 2 seasons. He's logged 23 games, 21 combined tackles, 12 solo to 9 assisted, 5 TFLs, 9 QB hits, and 6 sacks. So maybe there's some juice there. Maybe he's just another guy. I don't know if they're not liking what they've seen out of Von Miller. Dorrance Armstrong looks like he popped up on the injury report, and that does not look good. Maybe this is a reaction to that.
Yeah, that would be a bad.
It does not look good for.
He's probably been the defensive player of the year for us. I would think he would be in that conversation so far. So
yeah. So there's that. Now Wednesday's practice. The other news: Sam Cosmi, Jayden Daniels, and Jonathan Jones. Forgot all about him. All listed as full participants. In practice today. Terry McLaurin.
Jones is in that 21-day window now to come back. And I would think Sam Cosmi. I don't know if Cosmi will be back. I don't know if Quinn has been asked that. He probably wouldn't answer it yet anyway. But Cosmi, I would not be surprised if he's back on Sunday.
Yep. And Terry McLaurin was listed as limited, and I believe the expectation is that he is on track to play Sunday against Dallas. The injury report looks ugly, but you look at John Bates, rest day. Zach Ertz, rest day. Kinlaw, rest day. Miller, rest day. Payne, rest day. Larry Tunsil, Bobby Wagner, both rest days. Deebo Samuel did not practice because of a heel. So you wonder if that was also hindering him a little bit in game.
It seemed like it. He didn't look as normal.
As explosive, right. And Chris Rodriguez with a calf did not practice. But Rodriguez was hurt last week. I believe he was inactive. So, and then we'd already talked about Dorrance Armstrong. He's listed as a hamstring. So there's potential for a big blow there, but some big-time reinforcements. I don't know that Terry McLaurin coming back is going to be at 100% or what the expectation is there. But if getting Cosmi back would be big. And same with Jonathan Jones, especially if he can help out in the secondary. So, with that, I'll we can move on to the game on Sunday. 4:25 kick in Dallas, old Jerry World, AT&T Stadium. This is just I'm wondering if these boys aren't going to come out pissed off. You know what I mean? That and this is going to be, they could, if they use this as a stepping stone as opposed to being a detriment. This is going to be an interesting game.
It's gotten really hard to like even come up with like any kind of a guess as to what's going to happen with any game in any NFL city. So I don't know. I feel like I was looking at the stats today. But here's the thing about Dallas, man, and it's always the same. Every time we have a Dallas game, I look at the stats, and I'm always blown away by what a great season Dak Prescott's having.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't seem to matter whether he's having a great season, and he really is having a great season. He's got almost a 72% completion rate. He's thrown 13 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions, been sacked 7 times, which hell, that's a bad game for some NFL clubs. So he's getting good protection and he's throwing the hell out of the ball and not making bad decisions. But that defense, and again, I hate to even talk about this because I said the same thing about Atlanta last week, and what the hell did I know? But that defense, their defense is like historically bad so far. They are 32nd against the pass in yards, 31st in scoring against the pass. They're not much better with their rushing defense. They're 29th in yards, giving up yards, and 21st in scoring. Now, they're almost at the top of the league in passing offense, which is no surprise because I just rattled off Dak's numbers. But,
Well, and they throw like hell.
I mean, you're 2-3-1, and you look at the offensive stats, something's got to be wrong on the other side of the ball. They certainly don't have to worry about their field goal kicker. He hasn't missed one. And I mean, hell, I think the guy put him out there for a 75 or 80 yarder. He might be able to nail it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But their defense is, on paper, it looks pretty scary, and not in a good way for them.
Yeah, this looks like a game that absolutely is going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be. There will be points scored. It's going to be. It's kind of like we need to get back to running the ball. I mean, Dowdle just went absolute bananas against them, and I have to believe that we have a better offense than the Panthers. I believe Dowdle had over 200 yards of offense by himself. former Cowboy. So there should be opportunities to move the ball out of the backfield.
You would think, but I mean, again, it's like from one week to another. Who the hell knows? And I hope that they are a little bit more creative. They did a lot of running Bill up the gut on Monday night, and it wasn't working, and we seem to continue doing it, even though it really wasn't working. I'd like to see McNichols get more balls because I think he's a pretty tough runner. I don't know. I tend to think it's going to be a shootout. I tend to think it's going to be one of those somebody scoring 45 and somebody scoring 40. But I don't know which one's which. Just because neither defense seems to be able to stop anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Although we were doing pretty well against the run up until this last game. So I don't know. It's tough to predict.
It is. They have weapons. Obviously, you'd already talked about Dak. CeeDee Lamb, I believe, is set that he might be returning this week. They've got Pickens, who is appearing to just be thriving down there.
Mm-hmm.
And they have another guy we talked about on this podcast, Jake Ferguson, their tight end, who looks to be kind of the real deal. I don't know if he's quite Witten or one of those guys, but he's definitely a weapon back there. So
they've really only got the one running back. I mean, they have more than one running back, but they've got Javonte Williams, and that guy's getting like 95% of the carries. He's having a decent year, but I think the biggest advantage we have on them is, believe it or not, was the area that we were most worried about coming into the season, which is we're actually generating a pretty good amount of pressure in terms of pass rush and disrupting the plays in the backfield. We have like twice as many. Well, I have the numbers. They have 10 sacks on the year. 3.5 of those are from James Houston. We have 18. We have almost double the number of sacks. They had 27 tackles for a loss. We have 34. They have 35 quarterback hits. We have a couple more quarterback hits, and we have we have had 9 fumbles. Our biggest problem is we've not recovered a lot of them. Dallas has forced 5 fumbles, and they've recovered every single one of those forced fumbles. So, but the point being that our defense, at least on paper, has been a lot more disruptive in terms of pressuring the quarterback and getting in the backfield than theirs has. And especially if we get a little bit of help back on the offensive line, they might have a tougher time of getting to Jayden. Jayden really didn't get to Jayden much. It seemed like they pressured him a lot in that Bears game, but they had like 3 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss and a quarterback hit. I mean, they never really got to him. They put some pressure on him and forced him out of the pocket, but the O-line did a pretty good job in that game of keeping his jersey. I mean, I don't know if you saw Caleb Williams' jersey, but it was not clean.
No, it was dirty.
It had grass stains all over it. And so I kind of feel like that's what the game might turn on, is the pressure that we can put on Prescott versus what they can put on Jayden. But again, who knows?
One other nod here, and I'm curious to see, is another shout out to our special teams department outside of our kicker. I mean, Gay doinked a 50-yarder, but I think I saw a stat today that said he's 9 of his last 10, and that 50+ is one he hit off the upright. I said it in the chat, and I still believe that I think we're at a point now where they need to consider bringing in at least competition. I don't know that you need to fire him, but they need to make sure that we get this position shored up, and they better be very confident with him, because was that the difference in the game? I guess it could have been.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does that mean that they need to get a touchdown instead of a field goal to win? Sure, but I mean, now you're playing 4-dimensional chess. So, but the whole reason I brought this up is, once again, I think I would love to see Lane or McCaffrey break one this week. I think that could be a tone-setting play. You know, those explosive plays, and it seems like Luke gets 2 or 3 of them where he's like one missed tackle away from really getting into the open field.
Yeah, he had 4 kickoff returns for 127 yards, including a 37-yarder. Kind of like what you just said, where he's like just one ankle tackle away from breaking it. And I thought Jaylen Lane didn't get a lot of reps, but the ones he got, I thought he played pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
He's an interesting player to watch, you know. And I mean, aside from returns, I think he could possibly develop into like a real wide receiver.
All right, buddy. Well, I think we both think it's going to be a high, kind of an explosive. There's going to be opportunities for this to be an explosive game. I think there's going to be opportunities for both the defenses. There's going to be opportunities for the defenses to make plays, because a couple big plays on defense on either side could be what changes this game. We need to come fast. We need to come hard. We need to arrive violently, and in every aspect of it. And I think we can win this game. But I'm curious, what's your prediction?
Oh, Lord, I go back and forth, you know. I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I kind of already telegraphed what I think the key is like who gets the pressure on the other team's quarterback. But I think I think you talked about the team coming out mad. I mean, I can't imagine Dallas isn't going to come out mad. However, I think the X factor is Jayden Daniels is going to come out mad, and he's mad at himself for what happened. And he's going to want to bounce back and make a statement. And we really haven't had a Jayden game yet in 2025. where he just takes over a game. I don't think we have. And I'm hoping this is the game. Again, that's probably correct me if I'm wrong, but that might be the first time Jayden really, you could say, he lost us the game with a bad mistake. I don't recall him doing that
I think there
season.
might have been maybe one game last year that he had a couple interceptions, and I'm just trying to think back. There might have been one because I kind of remember having this conversation last year too, for one game where people were like, "Uh-oh, what does this mean for Jay?" And it's like, guys, he's a rookie, right?
Yeah.
Guys, he's 20 games into his career. Let's
Well,
bring it down on that.
I just think, and again, we've got the JD5 Superman logo in the background for a reason. I just think he took that. He doesn't show it on his face, and he doesn't show it when the media asks him questions. But I think inside that killed him to make that mistake. And I think he's going to come out like seriously. Talk about losing focus. I think he's going to be the most focused we've seen him since.
Yeah, hyper focused. Yeah,
the postseason last year. So I'm gonna. I think there's a lot of reasons to think we might not pull this out. Coming off a short week being one of them, but I'm going to pick us to win 35-27, and I think we're going to force 2 turnovers.
I'm a lot like you. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think this team's going to come out focused. You mentioned Dallas might come into this angry. They might come into this broken too, because remember they're 2-3-1. They're coming off an emotional tie game with multiple overtimes, and they come out last week flat and get beat. When is the turmoil going to start there, where they start to lose sight of and panic a little bit? They're not out of it. That team is an offense that can keep them in pretty much any game and in any season until December. But before I say my prediction, I do need to say we talked about the defense. We were critical. I got to say, though, Frankie Louvu probably had his best game of the season. He was everywhere. He was flying around. His hair was on fire. It was great to see. So you kind of hope that's kind of a jumping off point for him. And this is another opportunity for him to take another step against a team that he's probably pretty familiar with now at this point. I
thought Deron Payne was right up there with him as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they both had.
He blocked the kick that got kicked into his chest, but I just think beyond that, he played really hard in the loss.
So to your point, I agree. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I will say Washington 34, Dallas 29. I think it's going to be a little closer than you. I don't know that we have a full touchdown, a full 8 points in us. But they could see them going for 2 late and not getting it, which leaves them at 29, trying to get to 31 to make it a 3-point game. Yeah, so it's a big one. In terms of our expectations, I don't think. Look, I'm not. If we lose this game, yeah, it's gonna have some implications on our season. It brings us, essentially puts us behind Dallas in the standings, right? Because that would make them 3-3-1, and we would drop to 3-4. It would put us 2 games behind Philly, and it would be another conference loss. So if you're looking kind of out down the line, it could hurt. But I don't think it's a season-defining game. But I think the bigger definition is how are we reacting after the game we just had, and I think that's going to be the bigger thing.
I just want to make one comment that you just sparked in my head, because I've heard it a lot since Monday night, which is a lot of people saying this is the easy part of our schedule that we just went through, and now we've screwed up because we should be 5-1 or whatever people are saying, because it was the easy part of our schedule. There is no easy part of the schedule, and we don't know how teams are going to play against us or how we're going to play the rest of the season. We just don't know. So I just wanted to kind of mention that, because I just think that's what you're just looking at last year's finishing order, and you're extrapolating out to that's what's going to happen in 2025. And for God's sake, we should know. We're 6 weeks in. We should know by now. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way from year to year. A lot changes. So we just don't know. I'm not even going to make a statement on whether the opponents that we have left to face are a lot harder than the ones we've already faced. I just don't think on a week-to-week basis it matters. And not in the grand scheme of things. So.
No, I agree, and I'm glad you said it, because it's the God's honest truth that fans. This is not Madden. Okay, we're not rated based on. So now we're not a lesser team because we lost to the Bears, right? We just lost to the Bears. Like, if you've played competitive sports, there have been plenty of times that you just got a team that just gets you on a game, and there's nothing you can do. They just had your number that day, or the football gods had your number that day. It bounced the wrong direction. How many times did Philly last year? And I'm not saying we're Philly, but just to speak along that parallel, last year through 5 games, AJ Brown was threatening mutiny, and everybody was ready to get rid of their head coach, because he was apparently lost his locker room and wasn't, you know what I mean? And all they did is go on to win a Super Bowl. Okay, so am I saying we're going to win the Super Bowl? No, but what I'm saying is,
and we had a 3-game losing streak somewhere around week 12 last season, and it was the same thing. The season's over. The season's over. Well, then we rattled off rattle off 5 straight wins and win that. Go to the divisional championship. So you just don't know. I mean, we just, and here's the thing, we just got to man up. We're grown men, and women, we're fans. It's fine to get emotional about it, but at the end of the day, suck it up, man. I mean, it's a bitch to be an NFL fan. It just is. So, but that's part of the fun of it. We're invested. So sometimes when you're invested, you take a beating and it pisses you off, but it doesn't mean you're not going to, come out on top down the road.
And like, look, I'm on X Twitter right now. Somebody pointing out the missed field goal, and somebody's response is lost because of this, by the way, we didn't lose because of the missed field goal. It was a factor, but I could easily share Jayden's fumble and say we lost because of this. Are you going to bring in another quarterback? Is Matt Gay on the same level as Jayden Daniels? No, but let's not be hyperbolic for a minute, and let's be right and say you know what I mean? Like, there were a lot of things that went into us losing that game this past week, and there's going to be a lot of things that go into other losses. Guess what? Chances are we're not going to win out. Okay, so there's going to be more frustration. We're not going to end the season 14-3 and sail to the Super Bowl. There's going to be more frustration. And again, we're comparing ourselves to Philly, who've had Howie Roseman and that system in place for 7 years. We're comparing ourselves to the Packers, who could trip over a player in the parking lot and apparently find a fucking Hall of Fame quarterback, pardon my French, because they're on their 3rd quarterback in 40 years. You're right? Like, so let's not get hasty to the point where we start not liking a coach or not liking a player and getting frustrated because they're not getting cut, because there's a lot more development we need to go through before we can actually say the true expectation is to be a top 5 franchise in the NFL. We're still early in this process. It doesn't happen this quick.
Amen, brother.
All right, buddy. Well, hopefully next week we'll be rejoined by a handful of our other pigs. But this week we figured
our emotionally wounded fellow friends.
That's right. That's right. We do miss them, but we will get back to it next week. Probably be recording next Tuesday. Well, we'll see. Because after Dallas is another Monday night game against the Chiefs, which is going to be all kinds of interesting. And we've got a nice little stretch coming up where it's going to be some real competition. So as I say all that, it's been a pleasure. If you made it this far, please hook us up with all the likes, shares, follows from the bgobsession.com, and that'll do, pigs. That'll do.